Welcome to Train. I'm Ross Bagurtis, and in this video I want to do a deep dive into routing packets across an internetwork. Now this is one of my favorite things to talk about because it really gets into the hardcore nitty-gritty of data networking. And I probably say that a lot because I pretty much feel that way about all components of data networking. When you break things down based on the OSI model, there's really cool things and fundamental things that happen at each layer. So up at the transport layer, we have TCP operating. At the network layer, we have IP operating, which is part of routing packets. And then down at the data link layer, we have Ethernet running. And we need a way to tie all these systems together so we can move packets across a network. Well, specifically, the two systems that need to be tied together are the network layer, using IP, and the data link layer using Ethernet. And what we have to do is we have to generate a frame at the data link layer, and the frame has to have a source and destination MAC address in it. And then up at the network layer, above the data link layer, we have to have a source and destination IP address. Now remember from the networking models video that each layer of the OSI model creates its own little datagram. At the transport layer, we have the segment, which gets encapsulated inside of a packet at the network layer, which gets encapsulated inside of a frame at the data link layer. Well, in order for us to send messages, we have to have all of those layers and their header information filled out. Well, one of the pieces of the puzzle that's missing is sometimes we may know the IP address that we're trying to reach, but we do not know the MAC address. As a matter of fact, 9 times out of 10 that's the case. Let's think about going to google.com. Does anybody know the address of google.com? Probably not off the top of your head for several reasons, one of which is that they change all the time. Or there's a huge pool of them that you can use. But how do we get the IP address then of google.com? Well, if you remember, we use a protocol called Domain Name Service, DNS, and that translates the name google.com into a known IP address. So we already have a mechanism built into our networking system to let us know what the IP address is for any named device that's out there. So we can very easily get the IP address of a device. However, the MAC address is a bit more obscure, and we don't really need to know what that is as an end user, but our devices need to know what that is. So this is where enters ARP, Address Resolution Protocol. ARP is a way of finding an unknown MAC address using a known IP address. Now, I've already told you it's relatively easy to know the IP address of something, but it's really hard to know the MAC address. So what we do is we use something called a layer 2 broadcast. And a layer 2 broadcast is a mechanism where we can send information in a frame to every single device on the local area network, up into the router. We cannot forward broadcast messages past our router. And we're going to take a look at this in a couple aspects. But before we do this, let's take a look at how a broadcast message works on Ethernet first.